What's up guys, Justin here with the SketchUpEssentials.com, back with another SketchUp extension tutorial for you. So today we're just going to go in here and we're going to mess around with the extension Scatter. Scatter is a really powerful software or extension that's designed to really help you create like landscapes and stuff like that. It basically takes objects and scatters them around in your model, which makes it really good for creating things like grass and trees and landscapes. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so one thing to note is that Scatter is a paid plugin, so you are going to have to pay to use this. It does come with a free 15-day trial, so you can go check it out, try it out, see what you can make, that kind of thing. I do want to note that I am an affiliate for Scatter, and so if you do purchase through the link I provide, I will receive a small commission. But let's go ahead and just jump into this thing. If you want to get that, you can visit the SketchUpEssentials.com/scatter, or I'll leave a link to it in the notes below. So first thing we're going to do, and again, we're just going to kind of mess around with this and see what we can do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use sandbox tools to create kind of a surface that we can come in here and we can work with. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete out the default model, and you're going to want to use this from scratch sandbox tools option. And you may have to go in to your extension manager and turn sandbox tools on in order for these options to show up. So just navigate down to sandbox tools and make sure this is checked to enabled, because it's not always on by default. But so first thing we're going to do is we're going to use this from scratch object to come in here and we're going to create a grid. And I'm actually going to make this a 1 foot by 1 foot grid. So you see how in the corner it says grid spacing? I'm going to type in 1 foot and hit the enter key. And then I'm going to click once. And I'm going to type in 30 feet and hit the enter key. And then I'm going to move my mouse this way and I'm going to type in 30 feet again. So basically what I did is I came in here and I created a 30 foot by 30 foot grid. So now what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this and we're going to explode it so that it's actually in here as individual lines and faces and stuff like that. So select this box, right click and click explode. Now we can come in here and we can work with this. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the smooth tool to come in here and kind of move this up and down. And you can see how when I click on this smooth tool, I get this circle in here. And you can see how it's centered on wherever my cursor is, but it's a little big right now. And you can see how down here in the corner it says radius of 30 feet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in 5 feet and hit the enter key. You can see how when I do that, the size of this circle gets smaller. So now I can come in and I can kind of work with this. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of move some spaces up, some spaces down, create kind of a landscape looking space just like this. So we'll make some hills, we'll make some valleys, that kind of thing, just to kind of make this a little bit of an interesting space is all we're really trying to do. So there we go. So now this is kind of in here as more of an interesting type landscape in here like this, or type terrain. So next thing we're going to do is I'm actually going to come in here, and what we can do is we're actually going to smooth this. So to smooth this, what you're going to do is you're going to select this whole thing, and you're going to come in here, and there's going to be an option in here for soften edges in your tray. If that does not show up in your tray, just come up here to Window, Default Tray, make sure soften edges is checked, and make sure that that your tray is turned on. So once we've got that, what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're just going to kind of drag this little bar up a little bit just like this. And so you can see what this does is this smooths this into a single face. So if I was to triple click, you can see how it's still got all this geometry in here, but it's set as softened and smooth geometry right now. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this to be an individual face. So I'm also going to check this box for soften coplanar. And what that means is that means any of these lines that are on the same plane, just like this, it's going to bring them in as softened. So now I've got kind of this general terrain shape in here. And the reason that I did that is so that I can come up to my materials and I can apply like a dirt material to it. So like for example, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to select, I can either come in here and select either like a ground cover, like a sand, just like this. So you can see how when I apply this, this becomes kind of a sandy face, just like this. Or you could come in here and you could apply one of the vegetation options, like grass or whatever. And there's a few other things you could do in here as well. Like for example, if you came in here and turned hidden geometry on, you could select like a path across this face just like this, and then you can use an extension like selection toys so that you only have edges selected. And then what you could do is you could come in here and you could unsoften those if you wanted to, and kind of mess with the geometry a little bit more. You could also come in here, drag something across this and select only the faces, and then put the faces in some kind of group. Whoops. So if I was to come in here, select only faces, and then maybe come up here to edit and say make group. Basically what I did, now I can turn hidden geometry back off, but basically what I did is I kind of split this face into its own set of geometry in here. So if I needed to, I could come in here and say that I've got like a sandy bed that's running across this or something like that. So there's a few other things you could do in here, but this is just kind of setting up what we're going to do with scatter. So now I'm kind of putting these in groups just so I can come in here and I can adjust each one of them the way that I want to adjust them. But what we're going to do now is we're going to start scattering stuff across this terrain. Like there's a few different things you could do in here. Like you could come in here and you could scatter grass or bushes or whatever. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and bring some grass in. So in order to bring some grass in, what I'm going to do, looks like I could update some stuff if I want to, but we're going to start off just very, very simple. So what we're going to do is there's a whole bunch of options in here for scatter, and it can be a little intimidating, but we're just going to kind of go real slow and just walk through some kind of general stuff. And so the first thing you're going to do is you've got this option in here for hosts. And so hosts basically means where you're going to put your stuff. So in this case, if I select this face, so you've got a couple different options in here. You could pick like a curve, you could pick points, or you could come in here and you can pick a group surface, which is what we want in this case. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this, and it's going to ask us to click on a surface. And you can see how when I move my mouse over this, these kind of shade. That's just basically it telling us, okay, you can pick this if you want to by clicking on it. So in this case, I'm going to click this left-hand side right here. So that's kind of our first piece. So we've got a group selected over here. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to tell it what objects to scatter in here. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some of the stuff in here as kind of a default. So I'm going to tell it to open scatter library. And this is all kind of the built-in scatter library type stuff. So you've got a few different kinds of grass, you've got some flowers, you've got some bushes, that kind of thing. In this case, we're going to select this short grass one, just like this. And I'm going to go ahead and say there's two options in here. So you can bring these in as proxies, and you can bring these in as full geometry. So proxies basically brings in these objects as like a super, super lightweight, it basically brings these in here as super lightweight type geometry. At this point, since I'm using Twilight Render and I don't have the Pro version, I don't think the proxies really makes a ton of sense. I think full geometry is what I want. But for now, what I want to do is I want to make sure this render only box is checked. And what this render only box means is right now it's not going to bring in all of the grass geometry, which is a big deal because the grass geometry in here has a whole bunch of polygons and it'll slow your model down really fast. So make sure this box is checked for now. We'll probably go in and change that later. But then we're going to come in here and we're just going to click load, and we'll give it a minute to bring that in. And so actually you can tell what that did is that kind of wiped out what I had in here before, and instead that brought this in. It brought the object first, and now it's asking me to select a face. So I just have to click on this face again. And then you can see what this does is now I've got all these kind of red boxes in here, and basically the red boxes is showing you this is where it's bringing in like every one of these boxes is where it's spreading the little grass geometry piece just like this. So you can see how when I move my mouse around, there's a whole bunch of different objects in here and stuff like that. And you can see how it's bringing these in at different rotations as well. So it's not just like making a grid of this grass object, it's kind of randomly rotating it and placing it on this face so that everything looks really organic in here just like this. So, and I kind of like the way that it brought it in. The one thing you can do if you want is you can come in here and you can adjust your spacing to adjust how many of these objects it brings in. So if I was to tell this to do a spacing of like 10 instead of a spacing of 7, basically that means it's going to try to space this 10 times as opposed to 7 times across this face. So you can see if I came in here and I typed in 5 for the spacing X and the spacing Y, it's going to give me a lot more of these objects. So you can kind of control the way that it brings those in, just like this. So I'm going to bring these down, probably, we'll call it 8. And 8 for right now, and kind of see what that brings in. You can see how it's still bringing in a bunch of these groups, but it's not bringing them in as full geometry quite yet, which is fine because that's really going to slow our model down. So one other thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to adjust our style real quick, because what happens is when SketchUp has to render a whole bunch of different lines and stuff, and we select the style, when you have profiles turned on, it means that every one of your objects has kind of a thickened line on the edge of it, which is great right up until you bring in a big grass object that has a ton of geometry. Then all of a sudden it really starts slowing down your model. So we're going to go ahead and uncheck this profiles box and click on this box to update the style with changes. That just means you're going to save that change in your architectural design style right here. So the other thing we're going to do is, you can see how this is bringing this in on this hill right here. We're also going to click on this one, just like this. So you see how when I clicked on this one, now it's bringing both groups in here as hosts, and it's telling it to scatter this short grass object. Well, now we're going to come in here and we're actually going to generate the geometry. And so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to uncheck this render only button. Then we're going to come in here and we're going to click regenerate, just like this. And it's going to take a while, because if you look down here on the bottom, it says it's going to bring in 1,300 objects, and those objects all have different grass materials on the inside of them. So this is going to take a little while to do. And really, anything like this, if you're scattering a whole bunch of geometry, it's going to take a while no matter what you do. That's why the render only option is so nice. So if you do have a V-Ray or the Pro version of Twilight Render or something like that, you could just go over and just click on the render button and start rendering it without ever having to bring the real geometry in here. So that's one of the big benefits of scatter. Alright, there we go. So now if I come in here and I take a look at this, you can see how it brought in all this grass material on here, and it kind of put it on top of this green piece right here. And there's a little bit of gap on the edges, just like this. So there is definitely that gap right now between the green and the road, just like this, but we're going to go ahead and roll with it for right now and see what else we can do. So you can see how you bring all this in. It's got all the grass on your hills, and it is significantly slowing down my SketchUp model, which is why it's so important to be able to do this with a full-on rendering software, which unfortunately I do not have at this point. But you can see how I can kind of move around, I can navigate, I can adjust the way that this looks, just like this. So now what we want to do is we want to come in here and we're just going to add probably some bushes, just like this, some kind of random bushes in here. So right now, in the newer version of this, this actually allows you to put stuff on a layer. And I just haven't downloaded and installed that yet. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this group and I'm just going to create a layer for it. So I'm going to come over here to the layers section and I'm going to call this grass, just like this. And then I'm going to come in here, I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to select the grass layer. And I'm going to check, and I'm going to uncheck visible right now. So basically I just turned that off, is all that I did. So now I can kind of move around in this model really quickly. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new render. So we're just going to come over to render list and we're going to click the plus sign, just like this. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to scatter in some daisies into our grass, basically. So you're just going to come over here to the open scatter library, you're going to click daisy, and you're going to click load, just like this. And it's going to do the same thing. It's going to ask you to select a host. So I'm going to click on this face, and I'm going to click on this face. And you can see how this brings all of these in just like this. So you can see where each individual daisy would be, which is really kind of helpful. But the one thing I want to do is I actually want to come in here and I want to add a clipping area. So basically a clipping area is basically an area where you can tell it, okay, I definitely do not want you to put stuff in this area, or you can do the other way and say, I do definitely want you to put stuff in an area. So we're just going to come down here to this object that says add a paint area, and we're going to click on it, and you can see what that does is that gives me this this kind of circle right here. And so it lets you set your brush radius. So in this case, my brush radius is 36. I'm actually going to take that down to 12. And see how that made my brush smaller. But basically what I could do is I can click and drag along the edge of this road, just like this. And basically what I'm doing is I'm setting an area where I'm going to tell it I don't want to put the daisies, just like this. So in this case, I'm going to come down here as well, and I'm going to do the same kind of thing. So just kind of drag this along here, just like this. And you can see how as you paint, it kind of merges into itself a little bit. So you know, if I want to widen this piece a little bit, it does that. But basically, I'm going to set this area, and I'm going to select exclude. And so you can see how when I click exclude, it comes in here and it removes all of the daisies from inside this area, just like this. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to call this daisies. I'm going to uncheck render only, and I'm going to click regenerate and see what kind of geometry it generates for me. And you can see how the nice thing about this is these are a lot smaller. There's not as much geometry in here, and so it brings all these daisies in here as kind of their own group, just like this. And if I click out of that, then you can see these are in here as a group in my model. So I can create another layer, call it daisies, and then just set this group on the daisies layer. Now I can turn those on and off as well. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to turn my grass back on, just like this. And you can see how now I've got all this grass in here with these daisies in here as well. And so now what I can do is I can take this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And again, you can see why you wouldn't want to bring this geometry in, because it really slows your model down. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to basically create a render in a Twilight render of this view, now that I've got everything kind of filled in and ready to go. So I've got my view set. I'm actually going to go ahead and go to view, animation, and add a scene, just in case I want to come back to this scene. But I'm just going to do a quick preview render, just set on the preliminary setting. And remember, with something like this, with this much geometry, you definitely want to do the most preliminary, lowest level render as possible to kind of check your settings. So I'm just going to let this run for a little while. All right, cool. So you can see how what I've got in here is I've got kind of my hills with the grass, and it's also got the daisies in here. Really kind of like the way this turned out. So I'm probably going to get a little more in depth in it. One of the things that one of the reasons that you do a test render like this is to make sure that everything shows up properly. You can see how some of this green right here still shows up on the edges here. So I'm probably going to take these two pieces of geometry along the edges just like this and just turn them to the same color right here. And you could also come in, you could add a couple other things, probably some trees or something like that if you wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here real quick. I'm going to turn my grass back off. That'll let me work in here a lot faster. And I'm just going to go ahead real quick and I'm going to change the material of these two pieces over here. I may have to go inside the group to do that. But that way I don't have this little gap right along here where my grass was. So I'm going to go ahead and change that, and I'm also going to come in here and I'm just going to add a couple trees. And so Scatter has trees in its library as well. So I'm just going to click on the folder. I'm going to click trees. I'm going to say full geometry again. I'm going to click load. And what that's going to do is that's going to bring a couple trees in over here. And it'll probably bring that in over here as well. It's probably going to ask me again for another host to click on. So I'm going to click once on here like this, and you can see how if I look at this box, the tree is going to come in here probably way too big. This is kind of showing you the size that this is going to bring this in. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to adjust the scale down here at the bottom. So I'm going to bring this scale down to probably 25%, and I'm going to create the max scale to probably 35%. Just like this. And all this is doing, and this is saying it's going to randomize the scale between 25 and 35%, just like this, so your trees don't all look the same. And then you can see how it's only bringing in one box right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this spacing to something more like, instead of 300, we'll make it 100 on the X and on the Y, just like this. And even that is probably not exactly what we're looking for. We'll probably bring this up to about 2. We'll go 200 and 200. That'll probably bring in a couple trees. And then we'll also click over here to bring in a couple trees on this face as well. There we go, just like this. So you can see basically by these boxes, it's basically going to bring 4 trees in. So I'm going to uncheck render only, and I'm going to click regenerate, and that's going to bring in those trees right here. And same kind of thing, now I'm going to click out of it, and it'll bring those in on a group. I'm going to create a layer for the trees as well, and I'm going to put those on the trees, or the tree layer, just like this. And now I can turn my trees on and off as well. So now I can come in here, I can kind of set up my view just like this, figure out the way that I want it to go before I turn that grass on. So, and you can leave the daisies on and you can leave the trees on, and this works pretty well. The grass is really what's killing you from a geometry standpoint. But now I'm going to come in here, I'm going to get kind of a little bit lower. I'm going to turn my grass back on just like this. And probably what I'll end up doing is I'll probably end up doing another test render, but then I'm just going to render this at that higher style. I may put a new sky in my rendering software and stuff like that, just to make it look more realistic. Anyway, so if you want to give that a try, you can visit the SketchUpEssentials.com/scatter to check it out. You get a 15-day free trial on that. Just click on that link and then navigate down to the free trial option. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought. Is this something you might use? I know it's more of a premium plugin. Is this something that you would pay that amount of money for? I just love hearing your opinion on this extension. If you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new SketchUp content every week. If you like what I'm doing on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Every little bit helps, even if it's only $1 a month. That just helps me keep bringing you great SketchUp content. But in any case, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.